the moment a white person is born, they're afforded certain privileges.
Does white privilege exist?
Absolutely. All around. Right next to me. For black people, I believe white privilege is something to leverage.
What is white privilege?
Not being judged off top.
The white man is not the real man. That's right. He's a made human being from you.
Privilege, I think power, access, luxury.
White, run, controlled. They don't acknowledge what has happened in the past.
Arrogance, naive.
White people have taken advantage of.
There are things that I have to think about that they never think about.
But only helpful so long as it benefits them.
So what do you think about when you think whites?
They're mean to us so much.
He who takes the best meat, which is what they call white people.
They already are opposite us in color and opposite us in nature.
They have the ability to, show emotion and love to their sons without being emasculated.
White folks are able to turn on the television and see someone who looks just like them. Being able to actually use complimentary shampoo and conditioner at a hotel. Imagine how white women would react if hotels only carried Shea Moisture.
The ability to have our kids playing in a park and play with a toy gun and not get shot.
A white person is more likely to be approved for loans than black folks, and that's part of what has led to disparities in home ownership.
When I first moved there, it was mostly whites. But once they left, as they did in Gary, Indiana, and other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto. A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket, so I got out. But if blacks had more character and they were taking care of themselves and being responsible and buying land, and
That has to be taught.
so it's not racist. It's not white people's fault that you're not teaching your children to do that.
Why can't you give me a chance to build my credit? They give it to the white man or the white woman real quick. Why you don't think that I want that?
Everything we've ever learned in schools, every face on our cash money, damn near every page in textbook centers white people and has been written from the white perspective.
I can expect to be treated respectfully, and I can expect to be taken for who I am without people thinking about my skin color.
Caucasian mean weak-blooded, weak-boned, stale-faced. That pale, what the Indian call a pale man.
I believe white privilege is just the ability just to be free and white and not have the same type of social, economic, and social ills as black people have to deal with. I mean,
this is Beattyville, Kentucky, one of the poorest, predominantly white towns in the country. More than half of the people here live in poverty and rely on food stamps. Less than 100 miles from here is where President Lyndon Johnson declared the war on poverty just over 50 years ago.
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
But for decades, people here have struggled more and more as their factories have shuttered and their coal mines have closed.
In the 19 years since the fall of apartheid, more and more whites are coming face to face with poverty and social meltdown. A controversial affirmative action policy sees blacks take precedence over whites on the job market, giving some people little choice but to move into tents and caravans in camps such as this one.
Stunning rise in premature deaths due to alcoholism, suicide, and drug abuse. But why?
The health crisis here is particularly among the white working class or white people with a high school and no more. For those people, the economy has been very hard.
That's amazing. White privilege,
that you
absolutely.
believe that.
Why don't you black? How come you don't believe white privilege exists?
You know, I am black in color, but I don't have that dark mentality that most black people have.
Clearly.
I see, she said clearly, I see that white people have the same struggles and things that we have. Our white people are working hard to keep it going.
It's like, okay, I can understand getting knocked down. And now I don't know what to do, I'm overwhelmed. I get that. I've been there countless times. But you have to get focused, pick yourself up, find a direction, and make it happen in your life and for your family.
It's an illusion made up by black people and their leaders.
No, it's not. It exists. I'm a proud product of affirmative action. When I went to UCLA, it was because I was an affirmative action student.
I'm sorry to hear that. You would not have gotten in there on your own because you were not smart enough?
I don't know if I wasn't smart enough, but based on the curve and what I was competing with you know, other individuals who had different educational opportunities and teachers. I mean, I'm coming from, you know, the LA Unified School District. I went to all white schools from high school up through college.
So you got a good education. Why couldn't you get into the school based on your own talent?
I don't know. Because I didn't have some of the opportunity.
But you had the opportunity.
No, well, first of all,
you had the same opportunity those white kids were having.
Not necessarily. I had different teachers. I had different
resources. So you went to a white...
My father went to Harvard. You know, he was one of very few blacks.
Was he an affirmative action person?
I don't know if he was. That was back in the late 60s.
Well, then he wasn't. He earned his way.
I still had to be able to deal with some of the issues in going to predominantly white schools.
Like
but
what?
I still had to be able to compete.
Like what?
What do you mean, like what?
Some of the issues going to a predominantly
I would graduate from University High School, and at the time they didn't have an African American student union.
An African American student union?
At the school.
Well, that's a good thing.
They didn't have one.
That's a good thing.
Why?
Why do you need something like that?
They have Asian student unions. They have Jewish student unions. They have all kind of different.
Did they have white
unions.
student union?
They need student union. They own the whole school. I think all cultures should be able to segregate and to be able to work within their cultures and network within their own cultures. Absolutely.
Does racism exist?
I believe racism does exist.
And where's the proof of that?
In the economics with black people.
But that has nothing to do with racism.
It does. Racism is about power. It's about who's in control. And black people can't be racist because we're not in control. We're not in control of the educational system, some of the social organizations and things that run this country. We're not in control.
The left's argument for white privilege being alive and well in politics is usually this. There are disproportionately more whites than minorities in Congress or Parliament. Therefore, there must be discrimination within our political institutions. Racism is the only explanation for these disparities. I ask you, though, does it make any sense for there not to be disparities in politics? In other words, when has any institution, governmental, industrial, commercial, or otherwise, had perfectly reflective numbers of racial, ethnic, and gender demographics of their country's population? Unless there's a quota being enforced by the government, the answer is almost never. In the tech industry, for example, there are disproportionate numbers of East and South Asians. Why? Simple. These people happen to be the most qualified for their occupation they stepped up to. The same goes for nursing for women, engineering for men, and even politics. There's no law barring anyone from entering these fields. In fact, there are laws protecting them, particularly minorities, from people who wish to unjustly discriminate against them. We see these racial disparities in politics not because there's racism in our political institutions, but because it happens to be that the most qualified people who stepped up to the plates in politics were whites. These people are individuals, by the way. They're not merely walking identities like leftists would have you believe. How can it be argued that white privilege exists in the political institutions of Western societies when A, there are no laws disadvantaging racial minorities, and B, there are often special rights in the Western world protecting minorities?
And black kids who are allowed to get into these universities around the country, right, based on affirmative action, that's discrimination based on color, and that's wrong.
If anything, in the political institutions we have, minorities have the privilege. Minorities have privilege over whites when government sets racial quotas or affirmative action in public and private institutions. These laws purposely discriminate against qualified people for the sake of benefiting a minority that is perceived by the left as still being discriminated against. We've seen positive discrimination in Canada, France, and the United States. Who on the left can argue that the enforcement of these laws is an example of white privilege? Who on the left can argue that anti-discrimination laws and hate speech laws are an example of white privilege?
You would be in control of your own life if you had good parents, if they taught you how to be independent, if they taught you how to build, how to take care of.
I believe you're white or black. Pink, yellow, red, purple.
Does nobody care about this kind of stuff, man?
Yes, they do. I think they do, especially now in terms, you know?
I really don't. I mean,